The Pit Press Podcast.
Suggs pulls up, misses short. Here comes Dent on the run. Dent inside to the rim, got it to go. Are you serious?
How's everybody's morning? My name's Ryan Tamori, killing the continuity with the podcast already. This is the Pit Press Podcast. We are here to talk about UNM's 73-72 win over in-state rival New Mexico State. They sweep them this year. I think it's the first time in I don't know how many years. I was trying to find that stat. I think 3 or 4 or 5. So a big win. We'll get into our roundtable and all their thoughts. All hands on deck here. Obviously, I don't know. I'll just start with it. It's a big win, and it doesn't kill their kin palm. All right, joined by my business partner, co-founder with the Pit Press, Mr. Eric Malton. Senor, how are you?
Good, Ryan. Good morning, guys. Yeah, happy to be on. It was nail-biting win. Probably not as pretty as everyone had hoped, but special shout out to Turquoise Desert Tap Room for letting us do our pregame watch party with them yesterday. I thought it was a good turnout. A lot of people showed up, and we got sent home with some swag. So they also own a bakery next door, which does really well with Christmas, Thanksgiving time. A lot of pumpkin pies, pecan pies, pastelitos for some of you in New Mexico that know what those are. Ricky, I don't expect you to know what those are, but you might. But happy to be back on with you guys this morning.
I want to give a shout out to Armando Martinez. I appreciate it. We had some technical difficulties, and I'm going to kill this reference until the day I die. So that's such a great line. Eric, I kept saying that last night. Anyway, if the Pirates of the Caribbean doesn't break down, the Pirates don't eat the guests. But I was happy to go live. It was a lot of fun. That's a great place. I hadn't been there before. I jokingly called 550 the Strip of New Mexico because I hadn't been up there in forever, and all the construction was done, and there were a lot of lights. And then you get to the end of you make a left on the 528. And there's Santa Ana Star Casino with quesadas. He puts the fun in funny. Rick, I don't think you've seen that commercial, so sorry for that context joke there. And as always, I am joined by a Lobo fan since 1970, a Laker fan since 72, a Cowboy fan since 72, the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs, who was calling a game at Academy last night and had to record the game and rewatch it later. Mr. Ed Nunez. Senor, how are you?
Great. Actually, it's a Cowboys fan since 70 as well. But, I went home, and that's all right, and watched the replay. And it was, as Eric said, probably wasn't the overwhelming victory UNM expected. Many fans did, but they got the win, and that's all that matters.
All the way from Northern California.
Well, it was a savage beating.
We didn't have the savage beating that we had seen last night. Mr. Rick Thompson, 2-time offensive state lineman, and played under our friend Damian Segura at St. Pius, and a gentleman I've known now like 22 years. That scares me. Rick Thompson, though, how are you, sir? Good morning.
Good morning, boys. Yeah, no beating last night, but couldn't sleep last night after all the action. So thanks for waking me up early so I can spew some of this information off the top here.
Oh, we appreciate it. And you can follow him at NM Sports Capper, one of the most knowledgeable gentlemen I know in regards to just sports in general and college basketball. Mr. Jacob Neff. Senor, how are you this morning?
I'm doing good, Ryan. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. So I didn't get to add another pop culture reference. Yesterday when our friend Jared Chester, I did mention it in the live stream, but our friend Jared Chester and Neff knows Jacob, Jacob Neff knows Jared Chester, all the J's. And this one might be for Rick Thompson, where Patino didn't know the question that he asked him because he was complimenting on his mustache. So here's a good Chappelle Show reference.
Yeah, it was a tragedy. Can you repeat the question?
And that's how I feel towards New Mexico State fan, even though I enjoy when they're well. Yeah, it was a tragedy. He got swept by the Lobos. I said on our live stream that I thought they were going to kind of roll down there and beat them pretty badly again, because I don't know anything about this New Mexico State team. I'll throw that to Jacob and Eric, because I guess there were guys playing. It sounds super unknowledgeable, but it's the fact with the transfer portal, what happened down there. They're now 5-7 on the season. We talked about it on the live stream, Eric, they barely survived playing Northern New Mexico. They were down by 1 at half to them in Cruces at the Pan American Center. But the Donovan Dent, it's been heard around the college basketball world. It was all over John Rothstein, John Fanta. I wish I could have the Fanta jingle for him. Don't you want a Fanta? I don't know. The college basketball Twitter last night was a buzz with Donovan Dent and the reverse layup. Quite a move. We've seen him do that. UT Arlington, that's kind of his second late heroics of the season. I was wrong. I wish I had a clip queued up from our live stream. I thought the Lobos were going to go down there and roll them. And as the game kind of played out, you realize that it's still maybe a rivalry game. Like, these guys are aware that this is the in-state rival, excuse me. But you probably had to think that a majority of those guys were still pretty pissed off about the savage beating they took on December 2nd, 106-62 in the pit, sold out pit. It was pretty loud. It was pretty violent in there. It was a pit game. Raucous. I shouldn't say violent. It was a raucous crowd. A 44-point loss. So, I'm not shocked, but I was wrong. I thought, and I'm not the homer on this podcast, I thought it was just going to be just another terrible game and boring game to watch in an hour and 15-minute first half like we had on December 2nd. That's not the case. NMSU showed up. Jalen House said he wanted to be a wrestler, and he ripped his shirt, and he had to wear number 41. He ripped his jersey. With that said, I was with Eric at Turquoise Desert Tap Room again. A shout out to Armando Martinez. It was good food, great atmosphere. Eric, your thoughts on the game?
Ugly, scrappy. I'm glad the Lobos ended up figuring out whatever to do at the very end there. The on-ball pressure created Donovan Dent and Nelly. Nelly ended up having 5 steals overall in that game, and he had the biggest one of the game, which I thought was the player of the game, if you kind of remove that ridiculous Donovan Dent layup. But man, I think this team is kind of coming into its own, and I'm glad they finally faced a little bit of adversity on the road. And Patino referenced it in his post-game presser that they kind of figured New Mexico State was going to come out and play with a little bit more spirit this time around after taking that really tough loss down up in Albuquerque a few weeks prior. And New Mexico State was playing with some new players. I don't know if it was 1 or 2 players, but with that temporary restraining order with the NCAA 2-time transfer rule basically was upheld, which allowed some of those 2-time transfers immediate eligibility. New Mexico State gained 1 or 2 players, and Neff, this is probably your wheelhouse, but it was that Suggs player came in. He had 12 points off the bench. That was one of those guys that was a 2-time transfer. He hadn't played all year, and once the NCAA kind of lifted that ban, more to come on that later, but he was able to contribute, and 12 points is a lot. Credit to New Mexico State, though. They played a tough game. Ed mentioned earlier before we started recording that New Mexico State made their shots. Second half, they went 7 for 9 from three-point land, and that's kind of what brought them back. And they sustained some Lobo runs to start the second half. Lobo started out with a 12-0 run. New Mexico State rolled with the punches and had a few runs of their own. So it was really back and forth, scrappy overall, but I'm glad the Lobos went through a game like that and end up coming out with a win at the end.
I'm going to throw it to Neff on these guys that I hadn't heard of, but here's Patino. Quote, thanks to Steve Kirkland of UNM Athletics. 3 big plays that won us the game. Jalen House 3, Donovan's amazing finish at the rim, and Nelly's steal at the end. Credit to them. They knocked down a bunch of threes, New Mexico State. I was concerned about this game. Anytime you win in that fashion, we did it at our place. It is always going to be difficult to come down here. We just needed to find a way to pull out the win, and I was proud of our guys in being able to do that. You aren't going to blow out every team. You aren't going to go into your rival's gym, and it's going to be easy. We got tested tonight, and it was a good experience for us. End quote, Richard Patino. I would just like to say I didn't wear my hat last night, and here it is. And I know if those for you listening that can't listen, make your free throws. I know it's a Barstool hat. I'll get some crap for that. But free throws, where is it? 11 of 22. That's horrendous. Jacob, you were the one who texted me that they weren't missing their free throw, or they weren't making their free throws. Just your thoughts about the play. And then these guys that were playing for New Mexico State that, again, and I apologize, it's no disrespect that I have no idea who they are.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, obviously I think that was a huge, contributing factor to why that game was so close last night, right? You got to make your free throws. You can't make 50% on the road and expect to, win a game handily. You've got to take care of those when you get to the line. Just a little bit about some of those guys. Brandon Suggs is a transfer. He came from UCF, previously at Eastern Carolina, so he has some game, and actually was a pretty good player for them. So he finally was eligible last night. And then Jalen Jackson Posey was the guy who was killing us last night. 22 points. He's actually from Stephen F. Austin, and he has some game too. He hadn't really played to his potential this year. You could see his stat line across the board. He's real sporadic, but he finally busted out last night, hit 4 or 5 threes. And Carpenter last night was another one. He's a transfer from Mississippi Valley State, and they're not good. They're probably one of the worst teams in college basketball, but he hit 2 big threes last night, 2 of the threes that they hit down the stretch. And I think the final 2 minutes of the game, it seemed like every possession they took the shot clock down to 3 or 4 seconds and found a wide open 3, and they were hitting them, right? So they did play better last night. I think I was a little, I would say disappointed in the fact that they couldn't finish at the rim last night. There was a lot of missed layups, a lot of bunnies that were missed, as well as the free throws, right? And, they pulled it out, which is the positive. Taking a loss there, I think, really, really hurts their at large, even if there was a chance at one, later on in the season as it plays out. If you lose to a team that's going to be a quad 4 loss, that really, really hurts you down the stretch. So although they pulled it off, and there was a lot of mistakes in that one, it was probably our one of our first true road tests. And even though there wasn't really a crowd there, just the fact that, we were talking about this with Ed right before we came on, when you get into these rivalry games, you can pretty much throw everything out the window, right? It's just win and get through it. And, thank God that they were able to do that. And as you said, big play by Nelly to get that steal at the end of the game. Unfortunately, he didn't hit any of those free throws to force it to a 3-point game, but they made the plays that they needed to at the end to pull it off.
Here's that final sequence.
Is up. Aggies looking for the win. Jackson Posey's been hot. Lost the handle. Foul committed in the backcourt. Junior Joseph takes it. Jackson Posey floats one up, and it's going to be tapped, and the Lobos escape. Las Cruces, point victory.
Thanks to CBS Sports for that. Richard Patino 15 minutes ago, so he's an early riser just like us. Thoughts, quote, on the X, which sounds like a porn website, the old Twitter. Thoughts, the Aggies played great. Coach Hooten will build that program back in no time. Donovan's layup was the best clutch finish I had ever seen. Jalen's 3 was huge. Nelly's ball screen defense won us the game. JT was the unsung hero. Thanks to all those that came out. To Rick, X's and O's, what did you think about that final play and that sequence at the end there with with a big man making a steal?
Yeah, well, I mean, before hopping into the X's and O's, I think it just comes down to effort and intention. And the announcers last night, who are actually really good after listening to whatever we were listening to on Baller TV and Hood Rat TV the last few weeks, we actually had some knowledgeable guys last night, and they actually taught me some things. But one thing I wanted to mention is when you lose by 44 points or double digit points, then you have to go and play that same team again. Even if it's not a rivalry, as a man, you have something inside of you that says, I'm not going to let that happen again. Eric can tell you he was on some great basketball teams that would destroy other teams, but I'm sure there was certain times where they would play those teams at Taos or Espanola where they would hang around, right? And watching this game yesterday, the first half was just one of the most disgusting displays of basketball that I've had to watch. I mean, even in the second half, the turnovers, New Mexico State was literally handing us the ball. And sometimes I thought it was watching football with the handoffs that were happening. But I think with what you were saying with Patino there, Toppin was the unsung hero. And what you can see is the chemistry between him and Nelly running the high-low now. When I watched them play a couple weeks ago, when JT would catch the ball at the top, he was unsure of where to go with it. Now he's trying to make the low pass to Nelly, and Toppin did have his share of turnovers with 5, and a lot of them were on that pass to Nelly. But I'd like to see him looking for that now, and you can tell that they're communicating a lot better. And you guys already, hit the nail on the head with what Nelly did. The hedges that he makes on those ball screens, he made it a living hell for those guards. Every time they tried to get out, he had the claw on that ball, especially on that last play. And I think they even went to him with a few big buckets. He got a good putback in the first half when they couldn't score anything. And then again in the second half, I would like to see him with some more refined post moves because I think he can do it. I mean, did you guys see when Nelly just turned and faced, he crossed over and he almost went and dunked it on someone. So I'm seeing his confidence rise every game. And I think he has some game in there that we haven't even seen yet. And, it's coming out little by little. So just the free throw shooting, we missed our last 4. We could have already had that game won, if Mushila knocks those down. So, the last thing I wanted to hit on that the announcers made a good point of in our half ball game is using these rip screens, which are screens where a smaller man off the ball will go and set a screen on a big man's man like Toppin or Nelly. So then Nelly or Toppin can come across the block or across the paint with a smaller man on their back. And I think, they got to go to that. And I think that chemistry is just coming along. So once MASH comes back, I think that'll also cure some of the stagnant moments we had in the offense. Because, there was times where we just needed a mid-range jump shot or something like that. So that's kind of what I'm seeing at a smaller level here.
Not, I didn't think I would have a 2 Live Crew reference before 8:30 a.m. on a Saturday, but ain't nothing but a hoochie mama, hood rat. Now we go to Ed. Ed, I'm sorry, we're doing this roundtable. And then I'll ask you guys about Sebastian Forsling's great pass that hit Mushila for a wide open 3, and it was actually a big 3 there, like in the second half. But Ed, just your thoughts on the game and a big man having 5 steals and a defensive presence that ultimately kind of won this game for the Lobos.
Well, I think to Rick's point, my son said the same thing about Nelly hedging out and the way he hedged out, and especially on that last defensive possession. But a couple of things, though, Rick, you mentioned the dunk. He's got to finish that, period. You know what? I saw that a couple times last night at the academy. One kid tries to dunk, misses it. The other team goes down and scores a 3-pointer, 5-point swing. Make the basket, period. It looks pretty. Hey, when he went in for the dunk, I got out of my chair and then he missed it. Couple things on the free throws. Mushila shot 84% last year. You got to make those. Nelly, on the free throws that he missed, if you look at it, line drives, they're low. He didn't know he had no arc on it, no knees left at the end. So those are important free throws that you've got to make them. And as Jacob said, 11 to 22 on the road won't cut it. A couple other things. Jamal Baker did not have an impact on the game, but that pass to House out of a sideline play. Now, the play might have been drawn up for Baker himself, but comes over, makes a great pass, catch and shoot House. That's a huge three. Huge three. Now, we saw the good Jalen and we saw the bad Jalen. Some of the stuff he did last night was the return of the erratic House, the bad shot selection, fouling someone on a jump shot. You don't do that. And then he's asking, where did I touch him? It's like you saw it. He got him right here. Why would you try to block a shot anyway? The ripping of the jersey. Get your head into the game, man. Stop that crap. Stop it. But then this big three at the end, that was huge. A huge shot. That saved New Mexico, along with Dent's shot at the end, which I mentioned, you mentioned I've been a Lobo fan since 70, and I had to go back and look at that shot 4 or 5 times and remember, when have I ever seen such an athletic move? Incredible. Made ESPN's highlights. I remember Kelvin Scarborough, who had end-to-end speed and could elevate, but he did not have the body control of a Donovan Dent. So, Jamal Baker, no impact on the game. 3 points. They didn't really shoot a lot of threes last night. But a tough, gritty. And you know what? I looked at New Mexico State, what they ran. I'm always, and they were very effective in their half-court offense in the first half. Very effective. They ran their offense well. And as Rick, you mentioned, you imagine playing for Damian Segura, losing like that, in Capital, and then coming back to St. Pius. First of all, you'd been running till your tongue's dragged out. You're drugged. There's no question. And I have all the respect in the world for Coach Segura. I know how he coaches. I was around him a lot. So there's pride involved in it. New Mexico State, give them credit. I had my son, I had him on the way home, and he told me, Dad, they made shots. I watched the game. They shot with confidence. There's a big difference when you're shooting with confidence as to when you're hesitating. That's why Mustafa Amzil didn't see any time last night. He's not shooting with any confidence. New Mexico State did. Give them credit. They kept the game close, but the Lobos won the game when they had to. They made the plays when they had to. We expected a bigger margin of victory. The bottom line is they won, so I'll go with that. But it wasn't what we thought it was going to be, and sometimes those things happen.
No Amzo last night. Somebody that we've all been high on is Isaac Mushila. He scores, kudos to him. He scores his 1,000th career point as an NCAA Division I player. He's the 4th active Lobo player to accomplish that feat. House, Mashborn, and Nelly Jr. Joseph. When I read that, holy hell. Got 4 guys that have scored 1,000 points. He had 9 points last night, 3 of 6, 2 of 3 from the 3-point line. Eric, I'll go to you with what his impact has made, because this is going to be to all of you because of how I think well he's played. I still think Jamal Baker Jr., it's no disrespect to any of them. I think when Jamal Baker Jr. transferred over, and I had said it over the summer, probably still going to be wrong because I'm always wrong. He would probably be the X factor. But Eric, just your thoughts on Isaac Mushila. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. 6 rebounds.
That's okay.
In limited minutes. That's back-to-back games where he's pulling down the ball, right? And he's an undersized, whatever you want to call him, guard forward, blended 3-4. But that's how he's impacting the game and his defensive presence. So I think he's a smart player. He's an older player. He understands rotational defense. He knows where to be on the floor to kind of help on the weak side, or even just with what they're teaching now. You can see Nelly with actually defending those ball screens. That's being taught to everyone, defending those ball screens. I don't think it's just one individual player. It's definitely a concept that they're implementing and really trying to exploit. And it's showing an impact. It's showing an impact on the stat sheet and on the floor, because the Lobos forced, 16 or 21 turnovers last night, 14 steals. Like, I don't think that's by mistake. Nelly Jr. Joseph's had 5 steals on his own just by defending those ball screens. So I think it's just as a team, Isaac Mushila kind of steps into that role. He's rebounding the ball. He's defending well. He might not fill up the bucket that much, but when he does get the opportunity, he's definitely making it count. Removing free throws from the equation, I think the whole team can get better there. But I wanted to go back to when Ed was talking about Jalen House and some of his antics. Like we've seen that. Like, it's just one of those things we have to accept with just how he plays. But in the first half, he was a ball hawk, was extremely active on the defensive side on the ball pressure. He had, I want to say, back-to-back possessions on the defensive side where the Lobos forced 3 turnovers, and House was involved in every single one of those plays. Just up in your face, creating havoc, and they all led to fast break points. So, like, it's just one of those things, and we say it a lot on this podcast. We got to accept the bad with the good. And last night it was probably a little bit about 50-50. But yeah, I know where I was supposed to talk about Mushila, but I gave a little bit more than
good.
that. But that's where I'm
Podcast,
at
what
with
do you
that.
want?
Yeah.
I just learned Zach Lane of Lobo Lane tweeted out that I didn't see this, and Ed, I think you mentioned it, but Donovan Dent's play was #1 on SportsCenter top 10. I watch College Game Day, so that's about all I watch, and 30 for 30. Other than that, I just watch games on ESPN. I don't watch any of their other content. Ken Palm. And this goes to Jacob Neff, and you called it last night, man. They were 30th in Ken Palm, and you said, well, you were this close. You said they would be 38 through like 42. I wake up this morning and they're number 37. Just your thoughts on them dropping. It was kind of expected with that performance last night against New Mexico State.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to happen, right? It's just a reaction to losing to a team that's in the bottom, fourth of college basketball right now. And it doesn't concern me much with the drop. What would really concern me is if they would have lost. We probably would have found ourselves in the 50, 60 range. And like I was saying, that really hurts your at-large chances when you lose to a team that's going to be a quad 4 loss at some point in this season, right? I know you didn't ask me about Mushila, but you know how high I am on him. I've loved him since he was at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. I know he'll get those free throws figured out because this guy used to carry. I mean, I know it's Texas A&M Corpus Christi, however, it's tournament experience, and it's he's got that to his name. I think this guy, as he gets more settled in and finds his role in the team, because we have to remember he wasn't really playing at first. He was still kind of recovering from some stuff. And now he's finally starting to get his minutes, and we can see what kind of impact he's bringing off our bench. I mean, on a night where True Washington didn't really have it, he steps in and gives us, some points off the bench, some rebounds. Yes, he wasn't great at the foul line, but, and one thing I wanted to highlight just right now is it's amazing how we actually have a team, we haven't seen this in a long time, but we got a team that likes to play defense now, right? Even though we get into these high scoring games because we like to push the pace and play at a faster pace, the defense is there when we need it. And that's credit to Patino for getting these guys to buy into that. Because, last year we saw what it was when you run up and down and you don't play any defense and you play NBA style basketball. When you run into somebody that can just stop somebody for a couple possessions, you're in trouble because you're not providing that defensive pressure. And if your offense isn't on and you miss a couple shots, you find yourself in a deficit right off the bat. These guys are, like you said, Nelly playing huge defense down low. The effort's there, right? Everybody's buying into that. And, when we took one on the chin last night, you could have folded, right? We could have folded like a lawn chair with a lot of these young guys on the team. But, you could see Dent's in there. He's looking at the plays. He's interacting in the huddle. They wanted to make those stops and get back into the game, right? So they showed some fight. But, in relation to your question, Ryan, the drop in Ken Palm is what I expected. But it's not the end of the world, right? We dropped a couple spots. We won the game. But we've got plenty of opportunity here to make those spots up here in the next couple of games. Even though UC Irvine's been rough lately, they lost, their big guy. That'll be a win that'll pick them up if they can take that at home. And then we've got Colorado State coming up, right? So not the end of the world, but I did expect that to happen.
Rick, I'll go to you. Just your thoughts on Isaac Mushila. Then I'm going to go to Ed. Not that I like to tell how we're going to do the show, but I don't even know if we hit on JT Toppin and his performance. And if we did, my bad. But Rick, just your overall thoughts. And I think I was going to ask you again for somebody, and I know I've got 3 guys on here who played basketball. Regardless, and you had mentioned earlier, I think you'd said that they showed urgency or some sort of like, hey, we got to win now. And Dent's done that on the road against the Aggies. I mean, for them to do that, I think in the long term of context, that's a really big deal. Um, I was, I'm not here to rain on the parade. I know that the New Mexico Bowl is up here with New Mexico State and Fresno State, which that football program has truly resurrected itself or born. It's crazy. So I think there's a lot of people in Las Cruces and Albuquerque this weekend for that game. But yeah, Rick, just your thoughts on Isaac Mushila. And, we've had a conversation via text where I was kind of high on Jalen House, and then Ed, shout out to Adam Deal of Sports Primo, who I've had a conversation with, and I was like, I don't know, are they hot take? And please, for those listening, yeah, I know you can crucify me for this one, but it's I was wondering are they better without Jalen House? No, they're defensively, they are light years ahead. They are light years better with Jalen House. But Rick, just your thoughts on Mushila, and just coming out with, playing a game like that in adversity.
Yeah, I think you guys covered most of Mushila. The only thing I didn't like from him, those are just a couple free throws, and I agree. He's a good shooter, and he'll come back. He just took that questionable 3-pointer down the stretch there, where they got a long rebound, and for some reason he felt the urge to shoot a three, even though he barely shoots threes. So that was an interesting shot selection. But yeah, you guys already hit on it. He's kind of like the all-around guy coming off the bench, can do what we need. And House, he's just the wild card out there. We know what he's going to bring on defense every night. Offense, it looks like it's going to be hit or miss this season. He's either going to be hot or maybe score around 12 to 14 points, which is fine. I think that's all we really need. But he does need to keep those emotions under control. I mean, even after the game, he's throwing the ball in the air and he's ripping his jersey, he's screaming at the officials. We don't want another Draymond situation, even though there haven't been any retaliatory punches thrown or anything like that. But once you start ripping your own jersey and looking like Hulk Hogan, the wrestling stuff has gone a little too far. But at least he put on a shooter's number, 41, a la Dirk Nowitzki, a la Glenn Rice, and it made him knock down that final three. So I love House, even though he's a psycho. And, enough can't be said about Dent. I already compared him to Rod Strickland last week. Somebody said Kyrie Irving last night on the broadcast. Well, guess what? Kyrie Irving is the godson of Rod Strickland, so I was on the money. I've never seen someone be able to finish that way besides Kyrie. And you guys, please tell me if you have. But, the reverse on both sides, being able to protect with his body. I could see him playing on the NBA level if he improves his shooting. He is 6'2", guys, and that is the same size as Tyrese Maxey, the same size as Kyrie. So he could play at the next level, and that's what I'm fired up about this morning.
I think I compared his passing to Chris Paul, but I was joking last night with people we were talking to at Turquoise Desert Tap Room. I'm like the only person that likes that likes Chris Paul, but he's been compared, Chris Paul, Jim Rome used to talk about it. I know I'm dropping another Jim Rome bomb here, but that he used to slap people in the nuts, and that's why he was not well liked around the NBA. Ed, your thoughts? If we did get to JT Toppin, I'm sorry, I must have missed it while I was looking at other stuff, but 18 points and 11 boards, another fine performance from this freshman.
And the chemistry he has with Donovan Dent, a no-look pass underneath to Toppin, and Dent just seems to know where he's at all times on the floor. Athletic, can run the floor, can shoot the three. An athletic big, not a physical big. We've mentioned that. I'm really impressed with him. I didn't think he was going to be this good. I don't know that any of us did. That's a solid performance, 18 and 11. But because of the heroics by Dent at the end and the big three by House, he's kind of forgotten a little about as far as his impact on the game. But it was solid. 18 and 11 is great numbers for Toppin. And we expect that almost every game from him to have that kind of effect. I got to say this about back to Donovan Dent real quick, Rick. And he's his favorite player is Kyrie Irving. He's got a long way to go to get that. Right now, that shot there, and like I said, I've watched Lobo basketball for a long time, and I've never seen anyone make a shot like that. I'm going to watch it over and over. But as far as a shot maker, yeah, he's got a long way to go to get that shot. The shot has improved from last year. Tyrese Maxey is a heck of a great player, and he is 6'2", explosive, a great player for the Sixers. Donovan Dent, the outside shot will have to, to significantly improve to play at that level. But that shot there, unbelievable. And not only are we watching it here in Albuquerque and Rick, you in California, people around the world are watching that shot, and my mouth is still agape. I'm like, how did he get it up on the with his right hand double pump on the left side? How many times have I ever seen a Lobo do that? And I'm really trying to rack my brain and thinking I've never saw any Lobo point guard. There's been great ones, Greg Brown. We mentioned Phil Smith, Kelvin Scarborough, Darius Carey, Petey Gibson. We've mentioned a lot of great Lobo point guards, and I never saw that before. So that's exciting. But, I don't want to go off topic there, Ryan, sorry, but got me excited about Donovan Dent in that shot. But topping a solid performance with 18 and 11. And again, because of the heroics of Dent and House with that last three-pointer, which was huge, he's kind of forgotten about, and he shouldn't be. His impact was solid, 18 and 11.
They were able to sweep New Mexico State, given everything that's happened and the tragedy last year, which seems like a million years ago. But the fact that they think about this, though, guys, if you're a diehard Lobo fan, Aggie hater, that's a combined 2 wins by 45 points. If you want to look at it that way, I'll go down that road. But for the fact that, and I'll ask Eric this question next, Ed, the fact that they swept New Mexico State this year, I understand what's happened down there in the rebuilding of the program, but if you're a diehard Lobo fan, you have to be happy.
Oh yeah, really happy. I'm happy they just faced a little bit of adversity, played in a tough game. I can't say that was a tough environment because half of Las Cruces is already in Albuquerque currently, but just playing a true road game and then being able to go deep into their bench and have other guys that aren't traditionally used to coming in and making big plays. Like Ed really touched on Baker not having a big impact on the game, primarily like in the stat sheet, right? Like we've seen him make 5 or 6 threes a game. He didn't do that last night, but he made a high IQ basketball play at the very end that set up Jalen House's 3-point shot. Guys just filling their roles and making the right basketball plays all around, right? The defensive effort, them ball movement, kind of getting those important stops that they need to. And then I'm going to hit on it again, just the defensive ball pressure and the methodical and concept that they're teaching with defending the ball screen. That's going to continue to get better and grow. I think that's going to continue to put more pressure on the ball handlers of the other team, and it's going to be really hard to score on UNM if they kind of get that process shored up. So I'm really encouraged by how they kind of finished at this game, because on the way home, Ryan, yesterday you and I talked, and it was like, man, that was a bit of a head scratcher, right? It wasn't the prettiest that we've seen them look, but not every game is going to be pretty. Not every game is going to be like shots aren't going to fall, but if you can still find a way to win and you have a deep bench of 9-10 guys kind of doing their part, they all contributed in some way or another. So I think that's what you look for, and that's what winning teams do. And so I'm glad we're starting to see that now. Kind of we're approaching conference season where it matters a little bit more. So that's what I'm so encouraged. Yes, happy that they won yesterday. Yes, not entirely impressed with the way they won, but they still found a way to win. And then again with Donovan Dent's shot, like that layup was one, it was ridiculous. And then just the moment, right? Like when he made that shot and what that did was probably one of the most impressive shots I've seen a UNM player take.
And who it was against. That's NMSU's 3rd straight win against the Aggies and Cruces. And I've compared their schedule to UNM's non-con to, Cowboys can't play the Giants every week.
They can play the Eagles and beat the Eagles.
Yeah, whatever. They already lost to them. What, Ed, just your thoughts on beating that's where I was going to go with you, and then Eric. I'm sorry, I was asking you first. That's my bad. Just beating the Aggies in Cruces.
You know what? Someone asked me yesterday, and you said it, a Lobo fan and an Aggie hater, well, raise your hand. I've always hated the Aggies, and I make no bones about it. I don't. Somebody asked me yesterday, you're going to be rooting for the Aggies in the New Mexico Bowl? When the game starts, yes, probably. So, yeah, I think it's great. But you know what? I got to say this too, though, to be fair, give New Mexico State head coach Greg Hooten some credit. They played hard. They played well. He's building a program there. And Jacob, you mentioned some of those transfers that were eligible. Those guys made a difference, man. They did. It's a different college game now as far as who can, that judge's ruling. I think it's a temporary one. I don't know if it's a permanent one. I thought it was a temporary one.
2 weeks.
UNLV guy, Boone was eligible too with that ruling. So that helped. And Jacob, you hit on that. Suggs hit 12. That's huge. So, I watched New Mexico State. As I mentioned, sometimes I concentrate only on the Lobos. But I watched the Aggies in the first half. They ran their offense very well. Jackson hit some big shots. So give them credit. But as far as beating them, every single time New Mexico beats them in anything, oh, happy day. I'm very happy. So, yes, I'm ecstatic about that for sure.
All right. We are going to switch up how we do, I think, previews for games. It might be better to maybe do a live stream like we did, especially when they're away. But I'm going to turn to Jacob Neff and what he can tell us about UC Irvine.
Yeah, so UC Irvine is they're out of the Big West. I was pretty high on them coming into this year. They are suffering for some injuries. They are suffering from some missing players. It's really big right now. They don't got their big guy. He's huge. He's like 7'3", 7'2", and he's been missing for the last, I think, 5 or 6 games.
Brent Luchin.
No, I didn't prep my.
That's all good. It's all good.
My for this, but I'll have more information on his name. I think it's like Walp or something like that. Or let me see what his name is here real quick.
Welling, Carter Welling.
6'10". Yes, that's him. He's their freshman, and he's been missing. So that's, and then they've got Dean Keller. I mean, these guys are big. They're gonna pose a little bit of a threat to us because they've got some big guys, right? And ultimately, what UC Irvine likes to do is kind of play that methodical offense, get the best shot, and kind of shorten the possessions of games, right? They did that down in USC this year, and they won. Now, granted, Collier wasn't playing in that game for USC, neither was Bronny, so they weren't at their best. But going into USC and winning regardless, with that high caliber recruits that they get there, something to say. Yes, they've fallen off since then, and that's because they are suffering from some people that are missing. But that team's still going to be tough. They're going to play defense. They're going to drag you into a deeper game. Usually they don't usually get down big or anything like that. They don't give away too many points. So they're going to be tough. And I'm not saying that we're going to lose, because that's not what I think. I think, the Lobos are going to be able to pull that one off, but that's probably going to be our biggest test that we've had in the last 3 or 4 games here at home with that team. And, one thing I wanted to say, and I don't want to keep going back to this, but, I think it's super important to understand how big it is that the Lobos have somebody like Dent that can literally drive it to the basket at any point and get a free 2 points. I mean, that's so big on a basketball team, because there's only a handful or a select amount of people where you can trust giving them the ball and say, just drive it to the basket and go get a layup. And with his size and his nature, I mean, this guy's unbelievable. I mean, I know we've been talking about it, and the competition level with New Mexico State and stuff, but he's so explosive and so good to the basket. Like last night, that there wasn't no offense that needed to be ran, right? It was just go drive to the basket, contort your body, and make a layup like he does, right? And he makes it look so easy, which is crazy. So I just wanted to hit on that before we went on with UC Irvine. But yeah, it's going to be a good game. I'm excited for that one. And I think that they'll prevail in that one, but I think we're going to get a little closer game than we think we're going to get with them.
I do want to add something to that, what Jacob just said, because he reminded me of it. But in Patino's post-game presser last night, he made a reference to, man, this is a game that we could have used Mashburn. because you just talked about it
Yeah,
enough.
Ed
Like
said that.
having a guy that you could just give the ball to that can go get you a bucket when you need it, right? Like the Lobos didn't shoot at a high clip last night, but the balls weren't necessarily falling. But if you have a guy like Mashburn that you can give the ball to and let go to work and create his own shot, that's just a different angle that you can look at it. I know that on this podcast and even nationally, people have kind of been real critical of Mashburn's role lately with him being out and with how successful the Lobos have been without him. Well, this is the type of game that I think that they would have been in a better situation having him.
Mm-hmm.
So just being able to, this team is deep, like being able to have these guys that you can plug in at your leisure to kind of just in certain scenarios, right? Like it's not as easy as it sounds. And Rick, you can probably attest to it, but I mean, when you have guys with different skill sets that you can just plug in to give you an advantage in certain areas of the game, plays a huge role.
You know, I just want to respond to that too, Eric. I mean, totally. And I just think it's another level of how important. If you could get somebody that could drive it to the basket like that, and we don't have to rely on somebody creating a shot or a jumper at the end of the game to just go and take the lead like that, it's just another level of how potent the offense can be, right? You don't have to rely on a jump shot at that point. This guy can literally drive it to the basket because he knows that he's better than whoever's across from him, and he has so much confidence in it. That's just such a huge portion of what this game, you know, what we're going to see down the stretch. I think in UNM this year is we're going to start seeing, hey, we don't need to give the ball to Mashburn to shoot a mid-range jumper to win the game, right? Give this guy the ball, let him drive to the basket and make a layup because he's just that good at it.
Let me just break into that real quick. It depends on the situation, right? What does the situation call for? If it's transition, you get that ball to Dent, go downhill, right? The other thing is he's a willing passer. That guy will find he's dangerous, man. Now, if you're a coach, how do we defend this guy? He could split double teams. He's athletic. He's strong. He's explosive. He's a hard guy to game plan for. He really is. And then now Washington had an off game last night. But he's the other guy. Now, he doesn't bring what Dent does, not yet. But those are two guards. And then with House doing his defensive tactics and creating havoc, like Eric mentioned. But to your point, Eric, there's a point where they're going to need Jamal Mashburn Jr. I don't care what anyone says. They're going to need him to make shots. And last night was probably a game they could have used mid-range mash. I agree with you 100%. But Jacob, that Dent kid, man, I think he brings smiles to all our faces because that's not there. And then the guys in the locker room, they look at that, right? And on their phones, look at that, man. Wow. And they expect him to do it again and again and again. That dude is a different guy, man. He really is.
You bring up a good point, Ed, because that's what I'm talking about, though, is that drive to the basket is going to eventually open up so much at the end of the game, because if he's there and he can make the layup, he's going to make it. If not, someone's going to be open because he is causing that much havoc that they're not going to let that kid beat him at some point, right? And he's going to be able to kick it out to somebody or dump it off to somebody, and that's going to open it up, and that's huge for us down the stretch.
Absolutely.
Rick, you look like you had something you wanted to say.
You guys are already hitting it. I was just going to add, when Dent doesn't score, he dumps it off. We had over 40 points in the paint last night. And I think if mid-range mash can turn into three-point shooter mash a little more, that would be better for the team, because long jumpers from inside two are the worst shot in basketball right now. Look at Andrew Wiggins on the Warriors. When he was most efficient, they won a title. He shot over 40 of his shots from behind three. This year, his worst season, he's shooting only 20% from three. He's shooting long jumpers again. So I think if Mash comes back, he doesn't have to shoot 20 shots a game again. He can do more catch and shoot. It doesn't always have to be off his own dribble, since we have these other guards that can make life easier for him. But I agree. We're just loaded at the guard position, and the only weakness I really see is in the depth at post. If one of our starters at post gets in foul trouble, we have nobody on the bench other than Mushila to really come in and play the 4 spot.
Yeah.
something we're going to try to keep the tradition going here. Our snake of the week, which I don't have a sound bite, but I do have an air horn. That just seems very that just seems very snake. Maybe we can record him saying snake of the week. I will start, and if each of you have a snake of the week, which we don't even have any rules for it. I guess it's just a positive thing. I guess my snake of the week is Shohei Ohtani getting away with being paid billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it can be anything. I know you guys will tie it to Lobo basketball. I purposely won't. Actually, my snake of the week is Jared Chester's mustache. How's that? Rick, I'll go to you for your snake of the week.
I'm just gonna have to go with our guy Nelly and that defense he played last night. For me, that was the game changer, and just his energy and activity the last few games. So he's my snake of the week.
Eric.
Donnie, again, I'm going to have to go with Johnny just for the simple fact that he was Sportscenter top 10, number 1 play of the night last night. And then second time that he's made a game-winning layup this season for the Lobos to kind of seal at the end. So that's my snake of the week.
Jacob, I'll go to you.
Sure. My snake of the week is going to be JT Toppin, man. Without him last night, I think we were in big trouble. He collected a lot of big rebounds, had a lot of good putbacks. He started the game a little shaky, but he figured it out and put together another double-double. And I think that his contributions are what makes him my snake of the week.
Ed, your snake of the week.
For you, Jacob, I was going to say Colby Covington, man. I was going to say him.
I didn't know if we were going off Lobos or whatever. Yeah, so.
But I'll go with.
There's no rules to it. There's no rules to it.
No. I was just messing with Jacob, man. Because Jacob, man, your USC. I remember talking to you about it one time and was amazed by your knowledge. I really and impressed by that. But I'm going to go with Nelly Junior Joseph. Great defensive play at the end. To Rick's point. You know what? And to your hat, Ryan, make your free throws, man. Make your free throws. Those are so important. They really are. But
I know you can't see it on camera, but
yeah. Hey, big fella, get some mark on that, man. Bend the knees a little bit. Follow through. But that's I'll defer this time to Colby from Colby Covington, Jacob, and say it's Nelly Junior Joseph. That's my snake of the week.
I forgot I had these on this mixer. That air horn's so great. We definitely need to record Snake saying something.
You gotta get that. Yeah. It seems like you're like kind of his friend now, right? Like all those.
You gotta have him say like snake of the week or something.
Yeah.
That's where I was going.
You gotta really get it in there, even if you'd like hiss maybe before.
Even just a yell, right?
Yeah.
Here's the real question: is what is his wife's name? Our friend Steven Pena, he's got Snake on the Mount Rushmore of New Mexico athletics, and I know some people will find that quite appalling. I only intended to take a picture with Snake like once just to celebrate the start of the New Mexico Lobos basketball season. But what I will, and I probably mentioned this on this podcast already, was at the UCSB game. I got to the game early because I was running late for New Mexico State, and because there's like 2 roads right there, and in a much bigger city, I think, than people give Albuquerque credit for. I got late, so I was like, I'm going to be early for this game, and I knew UCSB would be good, and then I like to schmooze and BS with all the people there. But I for the life of me, for my years at the Daily Lobo, there you go. I didn't mention New Jersey, Ed. I walked down the ramp, and it was like maybe an hour and 10 minutes till tip, and UCSB was on the floor. The Lobos weren't on the floor yet, and Snake was by like where like Kurt Ross sits and like some other high-end people that like on the floor across from the ramp, like not caddy quarter from the ramp, but like parallel to the ramp. And I walked in and I was like, and I mentioned on this podcast, because I remember I mentioned this podcast, but like I walked in and I was like, man, it smells like weed in here. And then in the pit, and I walked, and I didn't like think about it, and I didn't walk on the floor because there was nobody there. So I walked through the bleachers to get to our seats, and there was Snake just yelling at UCSB. And I know Rick, and this is known, that he he he's there like 3 hours before tip, just yelling at people. But of all the Lobo games I've been to, all the Lobo games I've covered as a reporter, what we're doing here, I had never seen, unless I'm mistaken, but I had never seen him. He was just straight talking shit to UCSB, and they were shooting around. And I'm not joking. They were looking at him like, like the Mountain West, we had Nico Medved and Leon Rice, and they mentioned him, and they just happened to look over and they were like, who is this guy? Like, I don't know what he's doing, but yeah, we need to get him to record him saying like snake of the week, like, snake of the week or something. Like, yeah, I knew you would like that, Rick. We need something like that. But while we're on the topic, and I'll make this quick, in 2009 at the Mountain West Conference tournament, UNM needed a win to like make the tournament, and they lost to Wyoming, and Snake was there like above a tunnel in the seats of Thomas and Mack, just like with his head down. Like it was a straight out of a movie. Like he was like so upset. And the Wyoming fans, like students, were yelling at him, like, what are you gonna do now? It was pure, just pure. I don't know. I know I've gotten a few texts like, why are you taking pictures with that person? And that's the PG version. The Lobos, and that's enough about Snake. The Lobos return home to conclude their non-conference schedule with games against UC Irvine. That is on December 20th. That is next Wednesday. And then Eastern New Mexico, which again, I don't know what the hell we're doing with that game, but they get Eastern New Mexico on December 29th. And then January 2nd, Tuesday, to start the new year, the Lobos will head up to Fort Collins. I don't want to disrespect anybody. I jokingly call it Fort Collins, but Fort Collins Fort Collins is amazing. It's a great town. I love Colorado Springs and Denver, and I'm just not saying that. It's a great college town to take on at, I think, what are they, 20th right now? Obviously, that could change in 2 weeks, but Colorado State and Isaiah Stevens, and we had Nico Medved on the podcast at the conference media days, and he was fantastic. And another person that we didn't even ask Snake about and just brought him up. Yeah, so those are the next 3 games. Obviously, 2, non-conference games left at home. Ed Nunez, Jacob Neff, Rick Thompson, Eric Moulton. I'm Ryan Tamori. This is the Pit Press Podcast. Thank you guys for listening.